Alright, guys, we are going to um, talk about Alexander the Great. Okay, Alexander the Great. Alright, why the Great? In 10 years, Alexander of Macedonia created the largest empire in the world. Up to that time, Alexander spread Greek culture, ensuring cultural diffusion and the survival of the qualities of classical Greece. So this is a map of his area in which you can see he actually starts in Macedonia, which is in your top left part of your screen, and he goes all the way through Asia Minor, which isn't called that now, and he goes through Mesopotamia or the two rivers and goes into India. But before he goes into India, he goes into Egypt and the Nile, in which he takes over Egypt. And we'll see more about that in a moment. Born in Pella, Macedonia, taught by the Greek philosopher Aristotle, so one of the great thinkers. His father, King Philip II, was the king of Macedonia, and he had conquered the Greek city-states during his 27-year reign. Alexander was military trained. Philip, his father, was murdered. He was actually murdered by his chief of security, one of his bodyguards. He was murdered in 336 BC. So Alexander was only 20 when he became king of Macedonia. So here's his mom, Olympia. She was still alive. And then Philip. So this is from the mosaic of him in Pompeii. But you can see right there, he's on a horse. He's going into battle. And that's typically how we see him. And remember, he's only 20. Okay, expanding the empire. So here we see his expansion. From 334 to 332, Alexander and his army defeat the Persians. And the Persians are all the way, if you look into this map, this is of the Persian Empire. So he just kept pushing them, pushing it back, and made it his, or Macedonians. Okay, major cities in Asia Minor and along the Phoenician coast surrendered to Alexander. Between 332 and 331, remember it counts backwards for BC, Alexander proceeded to Egypt and established the city of Alexandria. He was at that time, he was made pharaoh. And Alexandria, it still exists. Okay, expanding the empire. In the Middle East, from 330 to 327 BC, Alexander conquered regions of the Middle and East Afghanistan. So we're looking at where Mesopotamia is, Tigris and Euphrates in that area. And he conquered Middle East to Afghanistan. So that was a lot of places. So he expanded his empire. Now he goes into India. He fights his way across the deserts of Central Asia to India. Alexander conquers the Indus Valley area, in other words, Mesopotamia. The Indus Valley in India, in 326. Alexander, this is his legacy. So he blended the Greek and Persian cultures together. He allowed people to study and worship and all of that with the understanding they could also learn this. When he conquered, he was accepting all different types. He spread Greek influence throughout all the conquered lands. So their thoughts, and you can see the top left image is a drawing of Aristotle with Alexander, and that's when he was teaching him, I suppose. Another bit of his legacy, his empire becomes three kingdoms: Macedonia, Egypt, and Persia. Here's where I was talking. You guys really need to read this. The phalanx, it's a formation of infantry carrying overlapping shields. And these shields would cover all the people in the middle, and they could have the long spears, or it would, yeah. So people in the middle would hold the spears down, and they could rush forward all together in a group. And then they would be covered because the people in the very front would have their shields there. So a formation of infantry carrying the overlapping shields and long spears, developed by Philip II but perfected by Alexander the Great. And that's why the phalanx is so important. Okay, mystery of his death. Alexander died of a fever at 33, but why? At the time he was in India, realized that there is guesses that maybe he just died of something like malaria or another disease that was carried by, like, say, mosquitoes. Plutarch reports that he had been plagued by several bad omens, certain bad things that kind of made him think a different way. Some others from the time claimed Alexander was poisoned. Okay, so maybe he was poisoned, but it seemed like this fever was more natural. So it's important to understand Alexander was a great because of the creation of one of the largest empires in ancient history for his military tactics. A couple other things. Why was Alexander so successful? When he was taught by Aristotle, he learned to think things through. And so that allowed him to be a master of strategy and tactics. Also, he was fearless. And here's the characteristics. He led his men into battle. He didn't just say, hey, go and fight. He led them. He was in the front line. He was willing to risk his own life just to, because if he was going to send his men in, he should be able to do it. While in India, Alexander was the first to leap over a city wall in order to inspire his troops. So not only did he go into the fight first, but he also put himself in dangerous situations. So this is just some of him. He's fearless, willing to risk his own life, inspirational to his troops. He was extremely smart, and all of this helps to really pull his characteristics as one of the best.